Alrighty, everybody. Well, thank y'all for tuning in to a Warhammer Anonymous update. What we're going to be doing in this video is this weekend. So this video is going to be out on Friday. This weekend, we will be at the Kansas City Open. That's GW's event. I believe right now in BCP it is 136 people. Do we know how many people are actually set to go on our team?
I think at the moment it's 10 to 12.
Let's say 10. So we've got 10 people going to the KC Open. We figured we would kind of just go over what we're going to be bringing, the list that we're bringing to the event, how we feel about it. It's going to be 3 days, 8 rounds, a lot of Warhammer.
I'm going to die.
Pretty big area. Swag bags are supposed to be pretty solid. Prizes at the end are supposed to be pretty solid. So we're pretty excited about it, especially the fact that we all live here and we don't have to get hotels and we don't have to do a lot of traveling. That is the absolute best part. And then we'll do a little bit about talking about the Balance Dataslate that came out. The big waste of paper, but we might as well actually talk about it. So we will start. Z, what are you planning on bringing? How you looking? What do you think?
I'm looking all right, I think. I'm bringing Chaos Knights for running House Herb tracks for 95% of the list. Running a super heavy auxiliary with a carnivore who is set for deep strike and all sorts of nastiness. Exploding 6s to hit, +1 wounded or +1 advance and charge, and when he's wholly within the deployment zone, an additional attack. So 8 attacks hitting on 2s. Gave him Helm Dog, so he rolls his own 1s. And then, as far as the rest of it's concerned, it's a Desecrator with the Teeth of Hunger, which is a Relic Chainsword for an additional attack. Blessing the Dark Master, so you can't reroll against him, and when he's favored, it's trains to be hit. Night Diabolist, so an additional attack, and he rerolls his 1s to hit. And then 3 more axes with Lightning Locks, just because it's silly. One of them is set up with Blessing of 1,000 Poxes, so when he's basic, he's 6 to hit melee or an additional 6 to hit auto wound, but then when he's favored, 6s to ranged attacks auto wound, which is kind of fun considering it's Lightning Locks, so 6s are 2 additional hits on top of that. So that's going to be a good time. And then running 6 Stalkers, which is pretty standard. Half with chain cannons, half with thermal. Everything with stubbers, and then it's half slaughter claw, half chain talons, so should be a good time. Mirror of Fates for the CP regen, and then Cursed Rune of Fate for just, it's funny. In my opinion. 4-up invuln when he's favored, and just random BS go, and just charge him into something and say deal with it.
So nothing too crazy off the mark there. It's the one big night, 9 littles?
10.
10 littles.
Yep, so it's 3 Moirax, 6 Stalkers, and then 1 Carnivore.
And 1 carnivore. Okay. So is that nothing too crazy off the standard of what's really been doing good with Chaos Knights. The trend you'll see with Knight players who are winning or competing at the competitive level is big Knight bad, little Knight good. That seems to be the common trend.
That's about standard. The Desecrator, when he's pumping out reroll, the hit rolls a 1 for ranged, which is pretty solid. The one thing it's a different change up from what I typically play. I usually run a Despoiler who has kind of a bit of a gotcha that people forget about. He's got a 9-inch aura of heroic intervention for War Dogs, which catches a lot of people out. I've had a lot of fun with them.
Especially when you're OBSEC. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's just kind of been stupid. I've been having a good time with that one, but just I'm trying something different for this event. And just looking there to have a good time, and this should be a lot of fun. In the test games with the Carnivore, he has been an absolute 140-point stupid unit that I absolutely love. 155 as he sits with upgrades and stuff. So deep strikes goes, and then when he's favored, deep strike him again.
Yep. And it felt pretty good on the GW terrain.
Oh yeah. It
Firing lanes are solid. Going through walls still kind of sucks though.
Oh, going through walls does definitely suck. The big thing I think for me is just trying to remember that there's going to be some windows blocked off, and that I need to play the terrain on top of play the mission if I want to win, and try and interact with my opponent as much as possible, which is why the Stalkers are so good, because they shoot and they melee well.
Yeah, shoot plus melee.
So you run 9 of them, but I can't, so I won't, because I don't have enough models. Otherwise, that's why I got Moiraxes, is because I was running the Stalkers, but because it's a GW event,
They're a little pickier.
they're a little pickier than most, so I gotta put lightning locks on them, which I still have a lot of fun with, especially from end of 8th edition when I used to run double mags, a rampager who was a turn 1 charge every game, and then just 4 lightning locks.
Yeah.
Is exploding 6s everywhere.
All right, Jeremy, you're tied and true. 8 games of Marines. How are we feeling? What are we bringing? How's GW terrain been feeling?
I'm not feeling good. It's actually pretty good on GW terrain, which we'll get to later when we talk about the data slate. But I'm bringing Space Wolf Successors, Whirlwind of Rage, obviously, and 5-ups against Mortals, because in all of Nephilim, I think my biggest problem has been any army that can pump out Mortals pretty reliably. Just, I pay way too many points per wound in Space Marines, and so any defense there, I think it's more valuable than the +1 to hit a lot of people run.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a Vanguard Attachment Patrol, triple Wolf Guard units, triple Redemptor, 1 Wolf and Dread, and a Hounds and Mordecai unit, because I hate the Psychic phase. And on GW terrain, so couple this with the Reliquary of Gothalamor Relic on my Psyker. I plan on, every single game, I plan on putting 2 of them up in the forwardmost corner I can in a rune, and just sitting there and being unshiftable all game, and giving out 2 -1 to cast auras.
Yeah, so you can try to combat people doing Warp Ritual and stuff, because they're going to try to get to the center, and you're like, well,
Yeah.
add some dice to that.
Anything, yeah. Anything that I can affect the Psychic phase is a pretty big boon for me, because I feel pretty confident in the other phases. I don't shoot very well with the triple Redemptors, but I also am not shifted entirely easily in the shooting phase either.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about any rail cannons this weekend. So.
Yeah, it'll be easy enough to just sit behind the runes away from hammerheads.
Because that'll be the one thing that we should see. But there's not going to be 3 or 4 different armies with that. You got to do Tau alone.
Yeah, it's actually not going to be that bad. And then I've got obviously all the little utility wolves, 3 cyber wolves, unit of Fenrizine wolves, and I've got the Armored Rust still on my Tech Marine, so I've got 2 sources of Fight Last in the list. I've got the Psychic spell to give cover to all my dreads. And yeah, I'm just going to try to play the game. I'm going to try to sit in the 2 runes on my side of the board every single game for as long as possible.
Points.
I'm going to have the wolves in. I don't want a single unit in my army dying until turn 3.
You don't want to be giving up anything unless you're getting something out of it.
Yeah, not even then, really.
I prefer not to even.
Yeah, I really don't want to lose a single unit until turn 3, because if I'm giving up my valuable units earlier than that,
you're gonna keep.
I don't have the punch to actually matter at the end of the game.
Yeah.
So, pretty much every secondary you take with Space Wolves, or at least all the good ones, are very back end heavy. And so if I can just survive until Assault Doctrine turns on for my whole army, and I still have my Chaplain to reroll, the fish for 6s, is the whole army's pretty much core.
Yeah.
If I can fish for 6s with my whole army, I can pick up 1,000 points in a turn.
Yep.
I just have to make it there.
Yeah,
that's all.
Correct. They've got to be wanting to come. You have to catch them while they're coming after an objective so that you can get that points out.
Yeah, that's it. I don't want to go sit on. I will go give you a single 15-point Cyberwolf on the middle point. For the first 2 turns, yeah. That's it. If that's going to get me points, I'll do that, but I'm not... there's 2 Infiltrator squads, too.
Oh, that's right. The basic troop tanks.
Yeah, there's 2 Infiltrator squads.
Good versus demons.
Which are good against demons and also still good on GW terrain.
Yes, correct, because you can hide them and be good against demons.
Yeah, and I can block out things like these Dread Claws, these Mad Lads, CSM lists.
CSMs, you're going to start seeing them. Anybody who's not paying attention, they are becoming a problem, and they have not been addressed. So we'll talk about that when we get to today's slate, probably.
Yeah.
Alrighty, Mr. Troll, what are you looking at?
My list is here for a good time, not a long time. I also really don't want to have to think during the event. It is 3 models. 1 Thunderhawk gunship, and 2 Estrella super heavy tanks. Dark Angel successors, because they're painted as Dark Angels, so I have to. Successor tactics are count as double wounds for degradation.
Okay.
And light cover outside of 18 inches, because there is still no guidance on how high above the table a Thunderhawk is supposed to be, and it measures to hull.
Yeah.
So realistically, nothing will ever physically be able to get within 18 inches of it.
Did you bring a long stick this weekend?
I've only got 3 different acrylic rods that I can use for it at the moment.
So it's a heavy boy.
Yep. I don't have enough
3 different
support.
lengths either.
I don't have enough support around the base for anything higher than 3 feet.
That's right.
But hey, it ignores vertical distance when it moves, so just swap out the rod. I won't actually be doing that. I will immediately be called on that.
Yeah.
It plays real easy. Sit there, blast stuff. People generally ignore the Thunderhawk, and with the 5-point upgrade to make it inner circle, I can really screw with people by getting 12 points of martial interdiction.
Yeah. Because it's hard to completely ignore a flyer the whole game. They can kind of get where they want.
Oh yeah, it's the dumbest assassin in the game, and I love it.
Well, that's Mike's list. The funniest part is people who are not prepped to dice check an entire T8 army with invulns, with protection, do get shot. Because everything's got fly. It just moves over the ruins. He's got to be on an objective. That's the biggest key. So it's really funny when you see the losses, because I've walked over to a mini table where Michael's just like, yeah, it's turn 5. All three vehicles are still alive, and you're just like, it's gonna be a bad time.
Oh yeah, that list can physically body block people off of 2 to 3 objectives. Like it is impossible for them to physically
touch the
get
objective.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. The RTT I took it to technically ended 2-1. One of those was the bye, because I got absolutely dumpstered game 1. But I fully expect to be the demon of the 0-4 pod.
Oh yeah, the mid tables will not have fun. Somebody's gonna lose a game and be like, nah, this is gonna be easy. What the hell am I playing?
We're
against?
supposed to have fun.
Yeah.
I will skew so hard I will break people.
I will let you borrow the Warhound for the next event.
No, I'll just buy my own, because I'm an idiot.
That's fair, do that too.
All right, Will. I think you're our one player playing demons.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of list are you bringing?
I'm bringing a battalion patrol list. The battalion is Chaos Undivided. The patrol is Zinch. Because 3 Warp Storm points to get +1 to cast is very nice on a Lord of Change. So I'm bringing a Poxbringer for the psychic actions. His whole job. Whether it's Warp Ritual,
Or
Mental
interrogate.
Interrogation. That's his job. Then there's a Keeper with +2 to our advance and charge.
So those are what, 18-inch movement?
They're 16.
Yeah. Okay.
And even still, if I deep strike it, come in a distance away, +2 is ridiculous.
Oh, is it +2 on the charge too?
Yes.
Okay, that's pretty solid then. +2 on the charge is pretty
It's
consistent.
only 20-point upgrade.
Yep.
Then a relic called Soul Stealer, so every time the sword kills a model, heal a wound back up to a max of 6. And if I'm fighting an Eldar, every hit's just an automatic wound.
That's always pretty funny.
And then it has 4 Strength 6, AP 4, 3 damage Malefic 4 attacks, which data sheet will get to that.
What was it? Now they've clarified that.
Yep,
so
they've
that's
clarified it. So those claws are really disgusting.
Technically, that was an
FAQ. That was the FAQ clarified Malefic
Yeah.
Talons.
But it still,
Yep.
ignoring AOC, AP4 is real good.
Remember, nothing can affect it unless it does. In which
Right.
case, it does.
Which it does.
Then I've got Rodigus, which is the named Great Unclean one.
Mortal Wound Bomb.
Mortal Wind Bomb, because every time he casts a power on a 7-up, he just does D3 to the closest enemy within 24. Does not require sight. Then 4 things of troops in the battalion for Bloodletters, Blue Horrors, Demonettes, and Nurglings. Then some blood. I have a unit of 3 Blood Crushers, a unit of 3 Fiends, and a unit of 3 Flamers.
I appreciate
Boom,
the
boom, boom.
I appreciate the dedication to just actually having a full mix.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, continue.
2 units of Flesh Hounds because they give you a deny, and
Yeah,
the
pretty good.
Yeah, I actually like Flesh Hounds a lot.
Corn dogs.
and then they have and Khorne has a strat where if you fail a deny, if you're within 24 of a Khorne unit on a 4-up, you stop it. But if you're within 12 of a Flesh Hound, it gets +1 to that.
Yeah, it's a really solid. They are very good anti-psychic. Like, they are surprisingly good.
Corn big angry.
Yeah.
You don't like psychic.
So the Warlord's Rodigus, but the Warlord traits on the Lord of Change.
Yeah.
So the Lord of Change has the Impossible Robe, Master Mutator, Exalted traits for if you took a Mortal Wound and Psychic Phase from him, I roll a die, on a 2-up, you take another one. And then his Warlord trait extends all Tzeentch powers by 6 inches, so he's casting from 24 away. Then another unit of Blue Horse. And that's the list. It does Mortal Wounds and some punching.
It's not the traditional Tzeentch list that everybody loves and hates right now, which is
the lack of flamers.
18 flamers. 3 flamers feels way better than 18 flamers. There's something a little wrong with that right now.
Yeah.
The list I'm going to be bringing is, as I've said with the group, we've got multiple guys who are playing Tyranids, so I've decided to put my Tyranids down so that we don't have everybody competing for best Xenos, best Tyranids at every event we go to. I'm going to be playing Imperial Knights. I'm bringing a House Tyrannus, 2 bigs with 7 little, 2 paladins, 4 Armiger Warglaves, and 3 Armiger Helvrins. The paladins are both Relic Warlord trait with a house upgrade. The Warlord will have the Iron Bulwark for a 4-up invuln against shooting, and he's going to have the Helm Relic, which lets his Bondsman ability, that's the word I'm looking for, Bondsman ability stay on a model permanently at the end of the command phase. And then he is a Master of Vox, which means he's going to be sitting in the way back of my deployment zone, and he can give out his Bondsman ability at any range, not just 12 inches. So he's really utility. Second Paladin's going to be the one who most likely goes to the center of the table. He's running the 4-up invuln and melee because that's typically how people kill the crap out of knights. And his Warlord trait is the +1 attack and always honored. The 2 ways that I'm running the army are the one that everybody does, which is hold more objectives than your opponent and gain 2 CP every turn, because who doesn't like 4 CP on a turn?
Absolutely.
And then the other one that I'm running is the, what is it called? Refuse No Challenge. It's +1 attack and melee, and you just can't fall back. Or if you fall back, you lose an honor point, but that's not really that big a deal.
Yeah.
A lot of the knights all have a melee weapon minus the Helvrins, so staying in combat's not really that big a deal. Been having some pretty solid success with it. Like I've said with the Chaos Knights, GW terrain's actually pretty forgiving. A lot of missions have objectives that are just sitting out in the open. So you will most likely be able to shoot at something. So as long as you can keep trading the objectives with your opponent, Knights tend to do pretty good. They've got a lot of obsec, surprisingly out of nowhere. My list gives 4 damage reduction 1 buffs per turn, one of them being permanent. So typically I can get the whole army minus the big knights damage reduction. And then
I
you
feel
just
salty about that.
yeah, poor Chaos
I have
Knights.
to take Ramshackle for that. I only do that on 1 dude, and I hate it.
So I'm pretty excited about it. I've been doing some pretty good test games. We will go to 2 of the guys who aren't here, but we'll move into them as we move into talking about the data slate. Everybody here's read it. Everybody on the internet's looked at it. So what do y'all feel hot takes about that? My hot take, giant waste of paper that they did on the internet. So you're a Chaos Knights player, so this doesn't affect you at all.
Oh yeah, I got away unscathed at all, and I just went. Although it would have been nice to get DR1 across the table, you know.
Yeah, no, we're not doing that.
Give me one I want, name.
But so Harlequins are obviously a
You
Knights
get all
issue.
your armors, damn it.
Yeah.
Because they bring a lot of haywire
That they do.
and a lot of damage too in melee. So and they move 900,000 inches.
I can get locked into the back of my deployment zone turn 1, and I hate it.
So
It sucks.
2 changes for Quins. They fixed light so that they can't advance in the vehicles and shoot out of them with anything that's not an assault weapon.
Yep.
And they still take the penalty, so they're still getting an 18% reduction in their shooting.
I'm trying to pull up the data slate so I can double check look through it because I didn't look at it all that well.
I thought that was the only thing they did Harlequins.
That's the only thing they did in Harlequins. And then the other big one, which is the Boogeyman that has been the mid-table wrecker and the top-tier producer, which is Leviathan lost Transhuman on the Warriors, and they lost Transhuman on the Zoanthropes. So now just the Synapse monsters get it. I know it's been a bane of existence to everybody in this room, so that's been a big change. And yet again, for his Knights, that's massive. So now you're going to be, instead of winning on 4s for like everything in your army, you're going to be winning that army on 3s 90% of the time. So Leviathan might be dead, or the 20 warrior Leviathan lists that people were running might be dead. So that's a pretty big change.
Yeah, I hated running into the warrior blobs, and then
Bouncing.
You either you bounce or you fail the charge and then they murder you anyway. You're just like, well, I guess.
Yeah, because the output didn't get changed. They're gonna hurt you real good.
But it's the fact of, can I hurt you back?
Can you hurt them back? You can at least do that now.
Yeah,
so that's the biggest change.
And the kicker too being is the fact that since I run Iconoclast, most of my melee weapons either goes from AP3 to AP4 or from AP4 to AP5.
Yeah.
And so they can deal with, oh, you don't have an invulnerable strip? Cool, they can
Cool.
at least.
Just pick it up. Everything goes through is picking up a dude.
Yep.
The big winner, right here, Jeremy, of the data slate.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the Marines getting shock tactics? Gets you one more victory point when you take an objective from your opponent during the game. Are you going to be taking shock tactics? Possibly ever.
No, not as Space Wolves because they have Warrior Pride.
Because Warrior Pride is just superior.
It's
Way better.
so
Blood Angels.
it's a thing where so there's like a micro sense to talk about this, and there's a macro sense to talk about this, and all my micro questions end up being like, I wish they just gave us a little information on the terrain that they make these balance changes around. Like, do we actually think that they're trying to balance the game around the terrain they use at their events?
Yep.
If that is the case, I don't know why they don't just say that. Like, this is the prescribed terrain for the rule set of the game. If you want the most, holistic experience possible with this rule set, you should probably play this terrain setup.
So this is the argument that I've been making, and it's the data backs it up.
Yeah.
The overall win percentage of all of these tournaments running kind of tournament ITC style terrain, all of these things, versus the win percentages and army turnout for GW events who use GW terrain are two completely different tables.
Because,
GW does a lot of its balancing based off of just its statistics. It gets data from things like ITC Battles app, which is, I feel like it's safe to say, a massive percentage of it isn't even tournament play.
Correct.
well, but I would caveat, like, we don't know. Like, you say we know they get their stats from this. They say they get some of their stats from that.
Because
we
their
don't
numbers
actually.
their numbers are definitely different
Yeah.
when you look at people who just use the raw ITC
we don't
and all of that stuff.
We don't actually know how they weight their stats.
So it's very
right?
interesting.
And so, I think, and I completely understand why they don't want to say how
Yeah.
they weight their stats. I totally get that. But I do think it wouldn't be that big of an ask to ask them, like, hey, there's WTC terrain, there's GW terrain,
There's player plays.
FLG terrain,
Yep.
and there's player place terrain. All four of these terrain setups, like, terrain is still the most important factor in 9th edition. From a Marine player, it wildly skews my lists one way or another if I know what type of terrain I'm going to
If you know first 4 blocks line of sight,
If
if
I-
you know large
right?
ruin,
And so, like, it matters more to me than the actual point values of my units. I will, what is a bad unit here turns into a good unit here.
yeah.
And so, I don't think it's that big of an ask, like, if the community could just ask James, like, is there a prescribed terrain setup that you actually think the game should be played on?
Exactly.
Like, are we actually all doing this wrong?
Yeah. Are we using bad math?
Yeah.
Well, according to the core rulebook of 9th edition, they recommend a moderate to large size terrain piece per every square foot of the table.
And according to the core rules of 9th edition, you will see objectives on terrain pieces this weekend.
Yes. And as that's been my biggest joke is terrain cannot, an objective center cannot end in terrain, except for on 4 different layouts in GW's packet.
Yeah, it's like, and I don't really like we could really get deep on the weeds on this, and it's like I don't really want to do that. I was so disappointed at the data slate. I was so disappointed.
Well, do you see any Marine player taking shock tactics?
Sure.
Top tier.
Marine play, and this is no like dig to Marine players. Like, I am a Marine player. You're taking shock tactics now. Like, but
8 points.
how do I say this nicely? You weren't winning anyways.
Correct.
So, like,
You got your +3 points. Let's say you got 12 points out of it. You got +3 from an objective that you wouldn't have had, but you lost by 18.
yeah, and in the armies you want to take shock tactics against, because probably 75% of the factions in the game, if their Marine opponent takes shock tactics, they can quite easily just give them a goose egg on that.
Correct.
They don't have to go to the
You're
middle
not shock
objectives,
tacticing Necrons.
right? You don't like. It's like, okay, I guess you'll take 0 on that secondary.
Yeah.
Like as a Marine player, I've held Marine players to 0 on shock tactics.
Correct.
It's fascinating how the objective names shock tactics and the little flavor text above it mentions like shock and awe and really dashing forward and seizing stuff actively punishes you for winning too hard.
Yes. That's always
Yeah.
any objective that you have that says you should be losing before you score points is a badly designed thing because you always have to yield. If you were overwhelmingly winning a game and you took shock tactics, you could not be winning the game by never taking an objective from your opponent. It's very strange.
Yeah. So like, again, like I said, I was very disappointed. There's 2 reasons why I'm very disappointed. One is because the entire world of Warhammer, including James, knows that things like Imperial Fists just
28%, baby.
do not functionally play 9th edition.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I have said this before elsewhere. I firmly believe there was nothing they could put into a data slate to fix Marines. And that it is,
I can think of 1,000 things right now.
It would, because the design philosophy around the book is too ingrained in the book to change
Agreed.
sufficiently on a 2 or 3 page PDF.
And the argument that every Marine player would make, and I would agree, is the giant list of changes they made to AdMech to bring them down is the exact same style of changes Marines needs to bring them up. Where you're not hitting this book from one angle. You've got to be coming at it 3 or 4 different spots.
I'm not even asking for that much, just an attempt. Because like
Yeah.
they just didn't even attempt.
Give me 5
so, like,
points.
So like we know
5%,
from
right?
the Salamanders chapter tactic, they're willing to change detachment abilities.
Correct.
So just give Imperial Fist a new super doctrine.
Yeah. Or change
I'm
doctrines.
not even saying it. I'm not even saying that's going to bring them to be competitive, or it's even a good change. But it's at least something. They're showing they would be trying.
Or the way that we look at it, the 2Z, 3Zs. Give me my 2 or 3%.
Sure.
Enough 2 or 3%, you can get me where I'm supposed to be.
Something.
That's why I'm looking forward to the points change in 2 months.
Possibly.
Well, yeah, and then here's my Pixar grand unifying theory. The tinfoil hat on now. They didn't address guard at all in this data slate.
Well, yeah.
Because their codex is getting ready to come out. Is that the same reason why they didn't really address anything in Space Marines?
Potentially.
Like,
But that's the big question.
If everything's getting like a 10 to 15% reduction in points,
We don't want to give them rules.
Yeah.
Right.
We 60 days out, if we're giving you 300 points, we don't want to give you rules.
Yeah.
Because we gave you 300 points.
And I like that's like a light at the end of the tunnel. I have to assume.
Wait for the video when he doesn't get the light, though.
I have
That'll
to
be a bad
assume
day.
that's what they're doing, right? Because
Point changes, Redemptors go up 15.
well, sure, but it's like I'll take a 15-point nerf to Redemptors if I'm also getting like a 25-point buff to my Vanguard vet units.
Or intercessors are 75
Or
points.
sure, stuff like that.
why are Hellblasters the same points for 5.5 years?
We can do this. We can do this forever. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yes.
Correct.
It's real bad.
I've got an idea. We can just sit down and make this an entirely separate video.
Sure, and that's why I was like, I don't really get into the weeds too much. I really just have like 2 overarching questions.
Okay, so we've covered Marines, Harlequins,
Yeah.
we touched on Nids. Necrons, the Silent King Lost Corps.
Yep.
That's,
Oh yeah,
Yep, they
Like-
got rid of that.
and the command barge.
well,
So basically, any vehicle that also has a character
Character
keyword,
keyword.
they got
Yeah.
rid of the ability.
so that
There was
does
a new game.
hurt their secondary a little bit, but we're still talking about an army who walks into the table at 85, 90 points.
right.
Yeah,
So-
still fine.
I think Necrons come out of this unscathed. Harlequins change their Sadith, but probably come out of this unscathed.
They just-
Tyranids move to Kraken over Leviathan. And yet again, or this is my hottest take for Tyranids as Tyranids player. What the Leviathan change is going to do to Tyranids players is Tyranids players who were showing up to events and getting a 60% win rate, which is where the army is scary. It's the 60% win rate problem. They were being held up by Transhuman. Those people are just going to find different armies.
Meta chasing.
They are just going to put down the Leviathan because it's no longer completely brain dead to run. Your skilled Tyranid players are going to move into and build Kraken lists, which were already overperforming. They just weren't as common. And the Tyranid win rate is not going to budge because people who would start losing with it are going to walk away, and your guys who figure out how to play the Kraken list, like the best players have been playing the Kraken list, are going to continue to win 70% of their games.
Oh, the opposite of Marines, where all the good players stay and all the bad players leave.
Correct.
It's also, it should be noted that like nerfing Leviathan, that was one of the one sub-factions in the game holding down Creations of Bile.
Correct.
And that was also, you know, like we're seeing like last weekend at SoCal, Tyranids were 12% of the player base.
No longer 20.
Sisters.
It's like if you're a Creations of Bile, nerfing Leviathan was a buff to Creations of Bile.
So that'll get into the part where Chaos Space Marines did not get touched in this. And people, I think the book is a little too new for them to have wanted to address it in this data slate, but everybody sees the problems. Emperor's Children, Creations of Bile are obviously overtuned. Abaddon is in 75% of Chaos lists. And I did not say Chaos Marines. Chaos lists. Between Knights, Demons, anything with the Chaos keyword, Abaddon is in 70% of those lists.
And Flamers.
A lot of the
And
top
Zinch
performing,
Flamers.
a lot of the top performing Chaos Knight lists is Abaddon walking the dogs. It's Abaddon. And
It's Abaddon, no big knight.
Flamers give the Marine list the shooting they desperately want.
They give the screen clearing that they
Yeah.
desperately need.
Yeah.
And then they bring in the drop pods with auto charge ranges pretty much right off the bat. So if you bring down NIDs at all, which I don't think you're going to happen, but nothing from the bottom got brought up, so I think your chaos is going to pop out at your top performers now. The guys who were experimenting with chaos are going to stop experimenting. They've already kind of seen it. You're bringing, depending on how the rules are interpreted at your event, Emperor's Children with Flamer backup, or you're bringing Creations of Bile with Flamer backup, and you're going to be taking top tables with W's. Like, that's what's going to happen.
Like, if I want to make my list I'm bringing to this event better, I drop a keeper to just throw in Abaddon.
Correct. Like
And I gain points doing this.
that.
And more Flamers.
And so that pretty much wraps up the data slate. But two of our guys who aren't here, Jason and John, both Tyranid players, both got hurt by the Leviathan change. Jason was starting to bring more and more warriors to bring a list that looked like John's. John typically ran the 20 plus Tyranid warriors, but with Terry and Termagants, no Reaper of Obliterax. He has since scaled down to 11 warriors. He brought the Reaper of Obliterax back. Still got Terry, still got the Termagants, but he has moved to Kraken. So move quicker, still be OBSEC, but got to add a little bit more punch. That's what he figured out. Jason's sticking with Leviathan, but he's really started to walk away from the warriors. I think he's running one.
I think he has like maybe
Yeah.
1 or 2 blobs of warriors.
But I think they're 5-mans.
Yeah.
The game I saw the other day, I'm pretty sure it was either one group of 6 or 2 groups of 3.
Oh, then he's really cut back. I think he might be back down to 2 groups of 3 now.
It's 2 groups of 3.
Yeah.
Because he has the 2 Terrys and a ton of Gaunts.
So he's going for kind of the strat that I was big on, which is Leviathan Gaunt Carpet. The Leviathan Termagants, when you still give them buffs for the 5-up Invuln or 5-up Feel No Pain, are still very hard to remove. The Terrys still hit really, really hard, but you got to lean into the baby transhuman side of the book more than the other side. And then he's bringing some Carnifexes like I was bringing. I'm bringing 4. I think he's at 2 or 3 because you're no longer playing into the Warriors, so you need to bring the other efficient data slates, which is Carnifexes, DR1, 2-up armor, baby transhuman. You can give one of them regular transhuman. You can CP to give one transhuman.
Spore Mines.
And then
Spore Mines.
the thing that none of us in this room and everybody still thinks needs to be addressed in a data slate is Tyranid Spore Mines, which I think you're still going to see. I think a lot of people are going to start doubling up with the 3 Biovores and a Spore Assist because it's just that effective and it limits tons of counterplay. Your opponents just don't have a lot of options against it.
Either you run through it, or you just.
And heck, they can choose not to explode it. So if they choose not to explode it, you can't run through it.
Like that's the part that's really weird because if you see a really experienced Tyranid player, like even if you've got models that you can say you can sacrifice the Spore Mine. So let's say they move block a Rhino or a Lehman Russ. And you're like, oh, well, what I'll do is I'll just charge my Lehman Russ at them, take the mortals for all I care, but it gets these Spore Mines out of the way. You want your Tyranid player does? I just want to blow them up so you can be in combat with me next turn. That's crazy. So when you try to do it inefficiently, they still lock you in. You're still move blocked. You're going to be there for another turn, and they get to replenish them because it's moving into their turn. So Spore Mines are still definitely a problem. They need to be addressed on how they interact with the movement phase. They should probably not have the option to be optional explosions, and they should never move block. When you move up to them, they should blow up in succession, not at the end of your movement, so that you can end on top of them.
The chance for them blowing up for D3 too is massive.
It needs to be moved. If they're going to keep the D3
Make
mortals,
it on a 6.
it needs to be on a 6 only.
Not a
It needs to
5
be the highest spike that you can possibly imagine, compared to just, oh, you're going to get 9 mortal wounds.
I have watched 6 Spore Mines repeatedly blow up planes.
Yeah, 10, 12 more wounds. I've easily seen 6 Spore Mines do 10, 12 more wounds.
Yep. Without an issue.
Well, guys, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for us. I do hope you enjoy us and watch. I'm pretty sure GW is going to be live streaming the event. They live stream all of theirs.
Yep.
A lot of the bigger channels and everything, Art of War, those guys are going to be there. So hopefully we'll get some interaction. Hopefully we'll get some guys on the top tables. We'll get on the live stream for you. And we will check y'all later. Thank you very much.